Wednesday. I am so excited to have you here joining. And we have a really fun session today on pixel math. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and then I will have lots and lots of good things to show you, all related to how you can use pixels in your math environment or in your math class. And so my name is Hannah Daniels. I'm the MimioSTEM product manager, and I'm excited to have you joining for this week's session. First things first, how could you use pixels for math? Please share any ideas you may have in the chat. The session is going to focus on K through 8, but if you have ideas for any grade level, feel free to throw them in there as well. I'm going to keep the chat open so I can keep an eye on anyone who's putting in questions or comments there. All right, so graphs came in, and thank you, Jonathan, for submitting that and putting in an answer with your chat set to everyone so we can all see it. That's awesome. Let's see, what else do we have? Drawing shapes and counting the perimeter. Ooh, that's one of my ideas for later. Love it. All right. So keep those coming if you've got more ideas. While you are putting those in, I wanted to do a quick promo for next week. Next week is a really exciting special Halloween-themed session all about dinosaur bones. So Evan is going to be doing a students-invited session where they get to learn a little bit about dinosaur bones, and there's a cool Tinkercad component where they actually get to design something in Tinkercad. So join for next week, have your students join, have them sign into your Tinkercad classroom, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Boxlight has this whole ecosystem, and I'm going to go into different ways you can use some of this ecosystem, from our interactive flat panels to some of our STEM solutions, but pixel math can also be done with low-tech tools. So I want to make sure that you know that no matter what of the Boxlight products you have, or if you are just working off basic like graph paper, that this pixel math session is for you. So the ones we're going to focus on today are how you can use our Exploris all-in-one STEAM lab. This is actually the product that inspired this session. So as you can see, it has a really cool pixel screen here that students can create animations on and do lots of cool stuff. So today we're going to use that, but we're also going to talk about ways you can do it with your interactive flat panels, your 3D printers, and more. So first, low-tech options. Lowest tech of all, just graph paper. If you have graph paper, you can do pixel-based activities. So what I would recommend doing is actually laminating the graph paper so you can use it over and over again, and then just use wet erase markers on top of it. And this is a photo I took for one of my lessons I'm going to talk about later about partitioning, but you can see that the outline here was done in a permanent marker, but all the student work is done in the wet erase marker. So you can erase everything that the students did and keep the permanent line marker there until you cover it up with a wet erase marker, and then you can remove the permanent markers as well. The other low-tech option for procuring pixels is spreadsheet software. So if you open up any sort of spreadsheet software, it's really easy to actually convert this into square pixels. So if you grab a whole bunch of columns, you can slide them over, and when they're all selected, they will all shrink down at the same time. So all I did was click on the edge here and either shrunk or expanded it, and the entire selection adjusted. Now this is in Excel and maybe slightly different if you're using Google Sheets or something like that. So if you don't have an Exploris, you don't have ExploriLab, but you do have an Excel spreadsheet, you are welcome to follow along with any of the activities here, although mostly I'm just going to be throwing a bunch of ideas your way rather than too much that has specific things to follow along with. And now for these ones, I wanted to talk about how you could use your Boxlight panels. So how many people here have access to some sort of interactive flat panel, or specifically a Boxlight flat panel, if any of you have those? Our panels come with two different softwares that you can use that are embedded by default in the panels. One is called Note and the other is called Links. And I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for a second and show you up on the panel behind me how you can set these up for Pixel Math. So back here behind me, we have, this is Note that I have open right now. And under the little pancakes menu in the bottom left corner, you can set a theme. And within the theme options, you'll find essentially graph paper. And when I select that one, you can see now I have a whole essentially virtual graph paper right up here on the front of my board. So this is really good if you're doing demonstrations with your students that you would want them to be able to replicate what you're doing on the board on their physical graph paper or in their Explorers device or anything like that. And then I'm just going to use a regular pen here and I can color in, you know, pixels just loosely, or you can even do big sections at once. And whatever you fill in, they can sort of be virtually filling in the pixels that way. Now in Links, it's going to look a little different, but what you're going to do here is from the bottom toolbar, you can go into the plus thing, the little plus button, and go into content. And from the content menu, we have some ready to go backgrounds that include graph paper backgrounds. So the same concept here where you can either use a pen, a highlighter, or like a rectangle tool to fill those in. So now that you've got an idea of how you could use this one, I'm going to now switch over, go back to screen sharing, and really highlight the sections I wanted to talk about today, which is the STEM side of things. So we have our either any sort of 2D or 3D tile. These were 3D printed from my STEM kits, part of our volume and area units kit. This is the metric one. So these are just little 1 centimeter squares, but we also have an imperial or customary one that are inches. And even if you don't have my STEM kits, it's really easy to make little flat squares like this in Tinkercad or any other design software. And then the one I've mentioned a few times now is the software that comes with the Explorers, which is called Explorylab. And so all the ideas I'm going to talk about, I'm going to show in this software here. So this is sort of the interface, and students have a very easy way to come in here. They can, all right, I'm going to just close and reopen that. But they can come in here, go into the art module, and very quickly set up and design all sorts of different shapes, designs, just like you saw that I had pulled up here earlier. So here's a version of that smiley face, very quickly drawn, just so you can see what the software can do and how students could use this as we go into all these math examples. Most of them are going to show pictures of this software. So you guys already shared ideas. I had one more chance to come back to it if no one came in, but it sounds like that y'all did a good job of chatting the first time around. If you have any new ideas, feel free to throw them in here. But otherwise, thank you all for participating and sharing your ideas earlier. So now I'm going to hit you with 8 of my own ideas, or 9. I forget how many I came up with, but I've been really excited with all the different possibilities of this screen. And so the first one is a virtual 10 frame. So 10 frames are really useful mathematical tools for those of you who don't know already, to help students understand numbers, counting, addition, and subtraction all within 10. And so the lesson you can see here is actually just comparing numbers more than or less than and representing numbers. So this would be, is 4 more or less than 2 or equal to? So we're practicing that, but students are actually just using the paint bucket tool to fill in this virtual 10 frame. So that's a different way if you don't have any sort of 10 frame thing. So of course we do have 3D printable 10 frames as well. The next one I have here is called partitioning rectangles. So this is the one I mentioned earlier with the laminated graph paper option, only now in Explorylab you can very easily partition your grid into halves, quarters, things like that, especially good for those, like first grade students who are just getting into partitioning. And what you see I'm doing here is I've actually just taken a index card and held it up to my screen, and I'm tracing it with a crayon. So I chose a crayon because I didn't want to do any damage to my screen. Just a very nice, soft sort of a drawing tool. And so then the students trace their shape with the crayon on this one, and then they can just slide it over and see if it fits the other partition. That way you know that these are equal shares, which is a really important foundation for understanding fractions. Another good way, and like I said, I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of ideas at you, but another really good way to use pixels is counting area squares. So you can give students a pre-made design and have them count, what is the area of this boat? So they can sit here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus 6, plus 4, 18, plus however tall that is. You get the idea. So I'm very quickly doing mental math here. I'm doing counting, I'm doing area. And because it has this design, this art component, it's more fun for students. You can also tie back to what I was talking about in the last one with, larger than or greater than, less than here. So how much larger is the area of the red sail than the yellow sail? And so I'm gonna, for this one, pop back into here, and I'm just gonna open up a different image here. Let's go for the figure. So students could have a graphic like this. It's a little walking man animation here. And so they could look at the different layers, and you could ask them, count the area, tell me the area of this little animated man's shirt. And so, like I said, this is something where they can do their own design, or you can bring in these other designs that are either pre-made or made by you in advance. And so they can be simple rectangles like this, or they can be compound shapes like the face would be here. So you could actually have students count the entire area of this little man's face. I just changed and erased a little bit of it, but that's okay. It's very easy to correct that and fill that back in. Now, one of you mentioned this earlier, but perimeter. So drawing shapes and figuring out the perimeter is another really great way to use pixels in math. So we're moving a little bit older. I'm sort of aging each of these activities up as we go. So I started with some good sort of kindergarten ones, and I'm going to work my way through older grades. But as I do so, I want you to think about how this could be adapted for your grade or what similar standards you might have. So this one would be, this sample prompt here is all rectangles with a perimeter of 12 units. But then with this lesson, we actually tie it back to architecture. So which shape would cost the least to install flooring in? If these are 3 different rooms, one of these is going to cost more to floor than the others. Theoretically, they should all cost the same amount to paint or tile the walls. And so we actually tie that back in and have them design a whole little house, and we do lots of area and perimeter with that, so it's a lot of fun. And then this one is one I've actually just been writing today. So I've had a lot of fun designing all these different symmetrical mosaics. And so this lesson is actually a part math, part art lesson plan, which I think is one of the key strengths of this device and also this particular interface, is it really lends itself well to interdisciplinary learning. And so with this one, it's just design a blank with one line of symmetry. So this is, a reptile or amphibian, and then we have design an insect, design a mammal, design a building, and students, get a few minutes to come up with a fun design, and then they take that design and make sure it has one line of symmetry the way they're doing it. Now, all of my designs, I just did a vertical line, but you could also require that sometimes it has a horizontal line of symmetry, or like this one, 2 or more lines of symmetry. So this ties in really well with a lot of like 3rd and 4th grade standards, depending on what state you're in. And in the lesson, we go all into the background of mosaics. And so we tie in a little bit of art history. At the end, students can actually do their own mosaic coaster. Again, loads of fun, all tying back into pixels. This one's pretty simple. Modeling multiplication. Tell the students to represent a multiplication problem visually. And so this would be, the sample I have here is 5 times 4. Simple, quick, easy. This is the sort of thing that would not be a full lesson, but maybe a 15-minute transition, 10-minute station, quick math. That's one of the other areas that I feel this interface or this concept really shines. All right, moving now up into 5th and 6th grade here, we have coordinates. So once students understand coordinate points and coordinate planes, you can have this be your 0, 0, and students can draw simple designs and then write instructions for those designs, share them with a peer, so trade, and then have the other peer have to create the same design using their instructions. So if you look at the instructions I have here is draw a black rectangle from coordinate 3, 2 to coordinate 4, 13. So that's the bottom of my brim of my hat here. And then draw a red rectangle from 4, 3 to 9, 6. And so it's just a really fun way to practice coordinates that again ties in an art component. Now for me, for this one, I would totally do this around the holidays. So maybe you're doing this with Thanksgiving themed pictures, like maybe this is a pilgrim hat, or you could do it at Christmas and people are building snowmen or trees or all sorts of things, or Valentine's Day. And then you could have, well, I don't know what else you'd get other than too many hearts, but either way, it's a fun, creative challenge that just reinforces some of the other math concepts. This one's very straightforward. Fraction. Represent a fraction, specified fraction, and this one, it could be either 3 over 10, and I'm just using the whole, it's 10 across, but only 3 of the rows are done. Or what you can do is actually have this grade for equivalency of fractions. So this is also showing 30 over 100 if you're actually coming in and counting these squares. And then the last one I have here is called tile transformations. So practice rotations and translations on a pixel grid. So this is one of my, 7th grade, very middle school type math activities here. And this one is showing students who would be designing do a barrel roll. And by that, I mean an aileron roll technically, but that's besides the point. So I took this little pixel art here of an airplane, and then you can see through each of the different frames down below how it rolls or rotates. All right, so there you go. I threw a whole bunch of ideas at you, 9 different lesson plans that you could use from K through 8. What one is your favorite? Please throw your votes in the chat. Just pick a number. So we have using a virtual 10 frame, partitioning on a lower level, fractions on a higher level, that's number 8. But counting area squares, working with area and perimeter, building mosaics focused on symmetry, modeling multiplication, doing coordinates and practicing design, as well as transformations, so translations, rotations, things like that. All right, we have a mosaic symmetry vote. I have to say that's one of my favorites of these as well, but I love the art side of things, so awesome to see that somebody else is there. Okay, somebody else put in the coordinate creations. Yes, agreed, super fun, lots of ways you can use that one. Oh, someone else is about to do the counting area lesson. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you can use that in your class. So yeah, thank you for joining. If you want to see any of these lessons, they are either being written, some of them have already been written. So the ones here in bold are already on my STEM kits. That is our lesson plan platform. I'm putting a link to it in the chat right now. Mosaic symmetry, like I said, I'm in the process of writing it, so give it a week or so and then it will be online. But I'm just finalizing it, so it shouldn't be more than a couple days. And I have obviously ideas in my head for some of these other ones, but whether or not they get written will, depend on how life goes. But hopefully these ideas will get you really thinking about how this Explorus device can be used far more than just for science, or anything like that, but is really good for fun interdisciplinary activities like this one. So thank you so much, everyone who joined today. Feel free to shoot any questions at me in the chat. But otherwise, oh, it still has my old email up there. As of the last couple days, my new email, hannah.daniels@boxlight.com, is active and working. So if you need to contact me, go ahead and do that. If you email my old last name, that one will still come through too. But thank you so much for joining again, and be sure to join next week. Have your students join next week. It is going to be a whole lot of fun. Students will be designing and printing their own little dinosaur puzzles, the sort of slide puzzles that you can see here. And I'm personally very excited to join that one as well and see how Evan put everything together for us. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Have a wonderful day.